As a man over 40, that's not a sound I like to hear, but chances are, if you own a set of SRAM Mavens, you've heard that sound more than once. Let's get into our long-term review over 6 sets of SRAM Maven brakes that we've been testing all summer long. Welcome everybody, thanks for joining us today. Over the course of the year, we have ridden 6 pairs of SRAM Maven brakes pretty extensively aboard different test bikes. We've ridden everything from the Ultimates down to the bronze level brakes, and I think we've kind of ridden at like 2 of each level of brake. And while there are certainly some positive attributes and performances elements of those brakes, there's also a lot of stuff that we haven't seen talked about negatively in very many spots. So join us today as we go through the pros and most definitely the cons of the SRAM Maven brakes. So before we get into this review, I would like to ask a huge favor. The smart people behind the computer screens have told me that 70% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed to our channel. It would be hugely appreciated if you guys took a quick second and just hit that subscribe button so you could stay tuned for lots more content coming. So let's get into these. All right. We're not going to go into all the details about the brake, the different models and prices and all that stuff. You know, there's been plenty of marketing and fluff pieces that have come out about these brakes, and if you want, we'll link you to our website where you can go to the press release and get all that info, or go to SRAM's site and learn about it. What we're going to primarily be talking about today is performance, pros, and cons. So first up, let's get into it. The pros about this brake, they are absolutely insanely powerful brakes. We have found that we can definitely size down rotors on some of our bikes. For example, here this RE Nebo Peak is a 42-ish, I think, pound SL EMTB, and it's got relatively small rotors, like 160, 180 combos on some of the bikes that we're running, where we've normally been like 180 to 200. So you can absolutely size down. I don't know if you need to, but you can. I personally am a fan of having more braking power than less. For me, I think it's a better bet to have more braking power than less. There are also ways you can tune power just like you can with any other brake or any other previous SRAM brake. You can do brake pad compounds or rotor size, and that will, and actually there's 2 different rotors as well. So you can kind of tune your braking power and the amount of bite you have for your application. So we've ridden them on non-e-bikes, downhill bikes, and full power e-bikes. And where I have really noticed it is, you know, when we're out filming a lot, we'll, you know, rip in and do a section, and then you'll kind of stop, and usually you'll stop in places that you don't or wouldn't normally stop on a ride. It's not where like the trail naturally rises and you take a break. We're still stopping on some very steep terrain, and I have found, like, okay, you go past the camera guy and you go to grab the brakes, and like, whoa, I just stopped like 5 feet shorter than I anticipated stopping, because like the bite is there, the power is there, and that is very cool. So from a power standpoint, no arguments, we're on board. And then from there, there's not a whole lot of positives left on our book. So we have 6 brakes that we've tested, like I said earlier, and I think that one of those 6 brakes has been problem-free since we got the bike and have ridden it. 2 or 3 of them pretty much like brand new bikes out of the boxes had problems, you know, and that was like the week that they came out. We reached out to SRAM and saying, hey, we're coming into this choppy section. We're giving a little bit of a squeeze on the brake as we enter the corner, and the brake bite is where we want it, you know, based on our reach adjust, our pad contact, like they're where we want them. Give a little brake, enter this section, hit a couple of bumps, and maybe you have to grab the brake again to get into the next corner. And when you go to grab that brake again, the levers are like way extended out at the end of the stroke, and you go to grab the brake, and instead of like pulling in through that dead stroke to get to your normal bite point, they like instantly engage out at the end of the travel. And because these brakes are so powerful, that had led to a couple of pretty sketchy situations where you go to grab the front brake particularly, and you're like, oh, I think I got another, you know, 1/4 of an inch, or, you know, before it's gonna bite, but it instantly bites and wants to pull that front end out. That's a little bit sketchy. So the piston massage. We have done the piston massage on several bikes. On one of the bikes, we followed the instructions exactly right. It shot a piston out of the caliper, which was a bit of a bummer. But why we think that's a bit of an issue and what we're uncertain of is if a consumer, whether you're buying a brand new, several $100 set of brakes in a box and putting them on your bike, or you're buying a brand new bike and you get that bike, right? And it's got top tier flagship level brakes. I don't really think it's right that the consumer should then be expected to go out, ride them once or twice, and then find out that their brakes aren't operating, and then they're gonna have to take the wheel out, put a bleed block in, do a piston massage. I feel like if you're selling a top tier product on an expensive, $8, $10, $12,000 bike, like you shouldn't have to fix your brakes. You should just be able to go ride that bike. And so, yeah, between a number of bleeds to piston massages to just general reliability issues, they've not been awesome. So yeah, like I said, one brake out of 6 remaining trouble-free that's not a great average in our book. So yeah, take that for whatever it's worth. The bleed process is not bad. It's not terrible by any means, but again, there are brakes that don't require that amount of service, and if you're paying that price, you shouldn't have to be expected to do that service on a brand new top tier product. So here's another example of an issue that we've been having. These brakes were bled 2 weeks ago, or less maybe, per SRAM's protocol. So I'm gonna give a squeeze. Okay, as we see, both of those are going to the bar. So I'm gonna go ahead and give some pumps here, and that one is still going, but as you can see, that one is about where we want it to be. That's where we have it to be set up and running. So there we go. After a few pumps, the brakes are now out here, which is where you get the brakes to be set up and run. And after just 2 weeks of riding, to have these brakes be in that condition, it makes for a little bit of a sketchy ride experience. One minor thing before we get into one of the bigger ride drawbacks I have with the brakes is a pretty annoying squeak or creak sound that we've gotten out of 2 sets of the brakes. One of the bronzes and one of the silvers have developed a really annoying squeak on both levers of those bikes. We'll cue that sound bite here. So as you can see, that's not ideal. Do you notice it when you're riding? I don't think so. I don't think I have. We'll go back and listen to some of the POV footage and hear if that's something you can hear while riding. I don't think so, but when you got a nice clean bike and someone hops on it in the parking lot to check it out and do the old brake grab test, that's just not, it doesn't ooze refinement and top tier product. We have sprayed stuff on it or put stuff on it and made it go away. However, it does seem to just kind of keep coming back. So that's a bummer. So while the reliability factor is probably a big enough issue for me to prevent me from buying a set of these brakes, I do want to cover what I think is probably the most significant negative drawback when it comes to the rideability of the brakes. And before I do that, I want to give some major props to Dale Stone. He did a very awesome review. We will link that below because I think while I'm going to talk more about feeling and perception, he did some pretty scientific testing and results, which was really validating for me as a reviewer. I normally, put together these reviews and the rest of our crew do the same. And then it's, kind of human nature, right? We want to see what other reviewers and people are experiencing to see if anyone else is agreeing with us, right? And it doesn't seem like many of the big reviewers have agreed. He did a very awesome review and have the same feedback and feelings that I was having with some kind of, pretty impressive bro science to back it up. That was really cool. So essentially what I'm getting at is, while the power is more than any other brake SRAM has made, and I would probably put it on par very close, right? From a like on the trail feel to Shimano Saint and TRP's DHR Evo brakes. Maybe a little bit more powerful at certain applications of power. The initial feel of grabbing onto the lever and the amount of like fatigue or muscle strength used in the finger and arms to activate the brake is greater. So I found myself still having hand and arm fatigue even when using these more powerful brakes. And it's interesting because in the marketing, documents from SRAM, they always talk about less force required and, more power means less fatigue, et cetera, et cetera. And, what I've found is that when you're grabbing the brakes as hard as you can, or like a very firm application of brakes, like late braking into a corner with high traction, that is true and it feels true. However, there's a lot more time where you're lightly grabbing the brakes or the brakes are at full extension and you're just kind of giving little, brake modulating or speed modulating squeezes. And to get that thing to break loose from its natural point through that dead stroke to get to, pad contact, that is a higher force of energy required. So where people, especially like the beginner to intermediate and even at semi-advanced level riders are spending their time and speed and braking, that means you're doing a lot more pulls of a lever. That is at, I would say it feels almost like, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say double the force, but significantly more force, like a noticeable difference in force to get that lever to break free and move until you get pad contact. So for me, that's a pretty major drawback. I like a very light and sensitive brake. I like something that I can really feel it move quickly and effortlessly. As a tester, I use a lot of hand and foot feedback through the bars and pedals to like judge how a bike suspension's performing, wheels, tires, and all that sort of stuff. So, when I'm getting a lot of fatigue on bikes I've ridden or on trails I've ridden other times, and the only thing that changes is the brakes, that's a pretty good indication that the effort that's taking me to pull those levers in and out over and over is detracting from my ride experience, because the more, you've all ridden with arm pump or hand pump, the more tired you get, the more you start thinking about my fingers, my forearms, I'm getting tired. And then when you start thinking about that, you start creating self-doubt. You start wondering, do I need to pull over? Should I slow down? I'm nervous. Will I be able to hold on through this next section? And that's when things can really fall apart and riders can get hurt. So, for me, it's kind of a spiral. And yeah, that was one of the only real negative ride attributes for me, was the fatigue, aside from, of course, the inconsistency and reliability stuff. But yeah, that's, again, maybe we've gotten unlucky and the 6 brakes that we've tested weren't set up correctly from the factory or had some issues or whatever it is, but I feel like 6 brakes is a pretty good batch, and a pretty good number of products to establish a pretty solid baseline for a review. I think, that I just don't know what else to say other than we've tried 6 brakes from the bottom to the top tier and have had similar issues across the board. So, yeah, they are powerful. When they're working right, they will absolutely slow you down and stop you as fast or faster than any other brake I've ridden. However, there are a couple of major issues for me that still would have me choosing other brakes for my own personal bike. So there you have it. That's kind of my thoughts and most of the other crew's thoughts on these brakes. If you guys have any questions, if you have any other brakes that you would like us to check out and review, we'd be happy to do so. Thank you guys very much. Please, again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can have you back for more videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you out on the trails.